in Rajagriha at Vulture Peak Mountain, together with the great gathering of the Sangha of monks and a great gathering of the Sangha of bodhisattvas. At that time, the Blessed One entered the samadhi that expresses the Dharma called profound illumination, and at the same time, noble Avalokiteshvara, Bodhisattva Mahasattva, said to Venerable Shariputra, in power of the Buddha, Venerable Shariputra said to noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, how should a son or daughter of noble family train who wishes to practice the profound Prajnaparamita? Addressed in this way, noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, said to Venerable Shariputra, O Shariputra, a son or daughter of noble family who wishes to practice the profound Prajnaparamita should see in this way. Seeing the five skandhas to be empty of nature. Form is emptiness, emptiness also is form, emptiness is no other than form, form is no other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, perception, formation, and consciousness are emptiness. Thus, Shariputra, all dharmas are emptiness. There are no characteristics, there is no birth and no cessation, there is no impurity and no purity, there is no decrease and no increase. Therefore, Shariputra, in emptiness there is no form, no feeling, no perception, no formation, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind. There's no sound, no speech, there's no touch, no dharmas, no eye, dhatu, up to no mind, dhatu, no dhatu of dharmas, no mind consciousness, dhatu, no ignorance, no end of ignorance, up to no old age and death, no end of old age and death, no suffering, no origin of suffering, no cessation of suffering, no path, no wisdom, no attainment, and no non-attainment. Therefore, Shariputra, since the bodhisattvas have no attainment, they abide by means of Prajnaparamita. Since there is no obscuration of mind, there is no fear. They transcend falsity and attain complete nirvana. All the Buddhas of the three times, by means of Prajnaparamita, fully awaken to unsurpassable, true, complete enlightenment. Therefore, the great mantra of Prajnaparamita, the mantra of great insight, the unsurpassed mantra, the unequaled mantra, the mantra that calms all suffering should be known as truth, since there is no deception. The Prajnaparamita mantra is said in this way. Teata om gate gate, paragate parasangate bodhisattva. Thus Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, should train in the profound Prajnaparamita. And the Blessed One arose from the samadhi and praised noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, saying, Good, good, O son of noble family. Thus it is, O son of noble family, thus it is. One should practice the profound Prajnaparamita just as you have taught, and all the Tathagatas will rejoice. When the Blessed One had said this, Venerable Shariputra and noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, that whole assembly world of the humans, asuras, and Gandharvas rejoiced and praised the words of the Blessed One. Kala jube nijo tamba nengu she luju mai du do jian zhu ba bo la ma yi bo xin zi ne zong an ro zo la ya ze lo. Chandara Samarayami Teata Om Gate Gate Paragate Parasangati Bodhisoha Papa Kusui Gai Dempe Doji She Doji Meba Doji Shewa Doji Dragi Baji Metin Peshutanji Shedin Goye Zo Yendo Nya Jejo Shewa Da Meto Nube Jendan Jewa Dan Don La Jujin Bun Sun Sun Droji Kashi Jan Den Da De Le Yo. The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, continents the sun and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. Holy Lamas high, wrap the sky of your Dharma bodies in massive clouds of knowledge and love, and let them pour upon the earth of your disciples as we are ready, a shower of rain, the teachings deep and wide. I send forth this jewel beloved, you precious Guru. Edam Guru Radha Mandala Gandhi Radhayami. Jadan Zaji Janam La Janju Badu Dani Jazuji Gagi Chinye Jibe Zonaji Drola Benji Zanye Rubaju Jadan Zaji Janam La Janju Badu Dani Jazuji Gagi Chinye Jibe Zonaji Drola Benji Zanye Rubaju Jadan Zaji Janam La Janju Badu Dani Jazuji Gagi Chinye Jibe Zonanji Drola Benji Zanye Rubaju. Apologize for messing the verse up in the Heart Sutra again. Okay, so when we're looking at the great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment by Lama Tsongkhapa, we find a section. In the section we have black actions and their results, and white actions and their results, and then a presentation of other classifications of karma. So we're currently now in the section on white actions and their results. So Rinpoche said the page number in Tibetan, so I just have to find the exact corresponding page number. 238, we find the beginning of that. The Gola.
Taina the Kabile de Catulo, the Sajin,
we got Chankar.
the Chikitre, Kabile de la Sambalani, Kabi,
the Chanka,
Ledon Jabo, Jadon Jet 1, 84.
Okay, that's it. Okay, awesome.
Yeah. What the Chikitan were Kabile de Sambalani.
That's it.
Takaba Gawacho the Marva, Kaba Gawacho. Ne gi lejo kabi gwajo gi debo sambatlan saje ni digndo kabi le dan debo kabi le che ju kabi le debo kabi le debo what the she we do marba
the Jew kabi the Yanja Suran the Tama Yanja
kabi le na kabi debo ni digndo
leso
ni digdo kabi le sana gwajo de marda konde
leso
gi le ju dro Tagwachu the Debucario and a teen Debushi was
lesser.
Debus led Marba.
Lesser.
What the che?
Lesser.
Tatane Takabi Littleton, Doten Jishini when she is more to Tasarda, Doten Jishini when she is Tasasa imba. Tatane Kabi Debu the Marba, Kabi Debu.
Lesser.
The Umatal Dua Kabi ne. Drebela son les cabin drebro, cabin drebo, cabin drebo de la namijin drebo, jutunjin drebo, dabin drebo son marba, dabin drebo son imba, namijin drebo, ne cabin les namin drebo de la, ne cabin drebo gawacho del chindi chonson yozan chewa tege, ne zodan zumen hal chigres, dingin debil hal chigres, chongo mel chigres marba, wote marba. Naming Debo, Chebe, Goaju, Chebe, Zozuman Hal Chigre, Nibin Dural Chigre, somebody Mel Chigres, what the leg do the Katu. Tangaso, what the Goan Din de Hamayan just said what the Dural Shawu, Dula Marbe, the Bilal Shawu, the Bilal Papa, Sojinigan on the Visha to E, de la Sosu.
Yemba Susuju Cha.
Tamatil or the shade on the Visha, that the Susujula shadows, and Mahumba Jiji Tamarba, remember you, Mahumba Jiji Tanle, what the Hazard with the Visha, that in Dollar shade, what then Dabadua.
Okay.
What the J. That Jutunji Jabo, that Jutunji Jabo, the Dandit, Magi Jutunji Jabo, do the Charos. What the Rose Chinsavarota, or the Tani Chinsaruta, the Beijing Rigor, do the Jaros, Romariba, do the Jaros, what the Taj.
Okay.
Goa Ju, Jutung Jabo, Dabi Jabo, Magua Ju, Jutung Jabo, Dabi Jun Padu Jares, Su Jebi, Jutung Jabo, Satua. Nemo la soba. So bombi gay legi Judy Jabotella Serima, Nemebo, the Najo, the Kazon Tamaja Sarwa, what that the Sani shades of the Virgin Jigota. That and the man
Dabi Jebo.
Dabi David Shestaro, Tangasuro.
Namin Jebo, Jutun Jebo, no, okay.
Namijin Jabo,
Bless it.
What the Chenrezig the Zuzu Megalata, the Lata Milje, Son Tarwa, that go out to the Jutunji Debo, and Serin Walla Susan, and then Dabi Debo, and then country the Pan on Zatulas of a Jucha, what the Tama Magi Dabi Debo, Jutun Debo, what do the Jaros, what about the Chinzaro? That and the man Janji such a soon dinner what the children on the children Magajubu Sutin Latene, and then Magajubu Sutin Latene, and then two Dundu to Tabatu to Saji Kum to what then the lady Marbe, Chundrubitu, Chudro, Debu Yaga.
Okay.
Debu Yaga, choose Debu Yaga, Debu choose Marbe.
The Tambo?
Debu Tambo, then Namin Debu Casa Nami Casa Nami Debu Dabin Debu, Jutin Debu Somarbe.
Lesso.
Then what the
Chudro,
Chundru is somewhat the Sajubi Jubalin Sajua Sajubalene, what the Cosul then would do, what the Chundru Sudre Takante, Magajum Sujin Latene, then do it then to Tabatu to Sanji to what the leader, Netudan, Rajedan, teaching Shajuka to Gores, Chundru Sude, Magajum Sujin, Sujin Songina, Devetele, Netuge. Ne Dajumba Tuture, Raja Dajumba Tuture, Tiba Chemi, Sanji Tures, what the Lego Maridate.
Then the giant Sheba Sache Tambo. Sumba. Tambo Dang Nipa Gar.
Nipa Tama de Casa Kabi Led and Debutu.
Okay. It's cheaper.
Yeah.
Garby Led and Garby Led and
Jabo.
The Tam. Okay, then gave the Kanga Lago Gangisin Jagare.
Kabi Debu de la Somarbe, Nami Jutun Son Jerawa.
Dabi, Lesso. Then so today we're looking at the section on white actions and their results, and we find in the great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment that is broken down into two categories: virtuous actions, and then the second category, which is the effects of those virtuous actions. So when we see this word, it's written in English, already translated or explained as virtuous, but when we see the word white action, and actions and their results, we're referring to virtuous actions. And when we look at classification, we're referring to the 10 virtuous actions, or the ethics which abandons the 10 non-virtuous actions. So when we say white actions, we mean virtuous actions, and those are referring to, in this particular section, those 10 principal paths of virtue. So when we get to the first section, we find that we have the presentation of what those virtuous actions are. So we find that those virtuous actions are accomplished by abandoning the non-virtuous actions, which are their opposites, with a virtuous mind by recollecting the faults of engaging in non-virtuous actions. So we find first this presentation on virtuous actions, and then the next category we find the effects of virtuous actions. And we've gone over that several times already, and we refer then back to the section on non-virtuous actions, or black actions and their results, in order to explain this section. So we find that there are three categories of results for virtue and non-virtue. So those are fruitional results, causally concordant results, and environmental results. So when we refer back to the section on non-virtue, we can then just look at the opposites or the other presentations that are given related to virtue. So when we look at the various fruitional results, we find in the great treatise, Lama Tsongkhapa states that the greatest level of virtue or virtuous action or white action produces rebirth into the upper two realms of the form and formless realm. The medium level of virtue or white action produces a rebirth into the desire realm, and desire realm God, and then a small level of white action or virtue produces a human rebirth. So we've at other times said demigod in that medium position. So we find here in this presentation that it refers to the desire realm gods. And then when we break desire realm gods down, we'll find that there are desire realm gods that are superiors or Aryas, and then those desire realm gods that are ordinary beings. So in this case, we're specifically referring to those ordinary desire realm gods in this case. So that's what's being spoken of when in this section when we're looking at the fruitional results. And then the next section, we find the causally concordant results. And causally concordant results of virtuous actions are basically the opposites of the non-virtuous actions. So we went back to the couple pages before to go over that. So for instance, when we looked at black actions and their results, or non-virtuous actions, we found that the result of the non-virtuous action of killing is that one will have a short lifespan and many illnesses. So when we look at to find the causally concordant result of a virtuous action, which in this case, the corresponding virtue would be the ethics, which abandons the non-virtue, which is killing, then we have the opposite result. So we have a lengthened lifespan or a long lifespan that is free of illnesses instead of full of illnesses. So this is, then we've gone over this now enough times that then I think everyone here understands and can then apply the same logic to the other 9 as we previously did in looking at causally concordant results, beginning with the ethics which abandons the non-virtue of killing. So then the next section is the section on environmental effects. So this is the third kind of result. So the environmental result is engaging in virtuous action is that one is able to have an environment wherever the place that they live that has an abundance of food and so forth, and medicines, and that not only the abundance of the food and medicine, but potent food, nutritious, is probably the best way to translate it, nutritious food that is, and medicine that has potency or power. So we find that these kind of details within the environment that we live in are produced by our actions. So in this case, we begin again with the ethics, which abandons the non-virtue of killing, and we find that we have that opposite environmental result of the actual non-virtue of killing. And in this case, we have a place where we have a lengthened lifespan, but then the environment within it has all of these things that we need and enjoyments that are suitable and nutritious and full. Nghe sampa diksan.
Tanda kabin debo khature do kabin debo ngai song se be chini me do santre. Kabin debo la watere do kabin debo la ane son de sheba dans nami debo jutun dale son de sheba je o de saje ta dane chunru bichu sajuba do de chunru bichu do de ni ba sajuba de
oh leso
kabin debo ta chunru bichu sajini dine ta kabin debo cha nami debo dabi debo jutun debo kasasarwa ta chabu kuche ta nieba de chudru bichu de wode sajubalis at the memore sajubalis.
So then when we look at Jayan Sheba's commentary, we find that there are three categories: the virtuous actions, the effects of virtuous actions, and then that section on the effects of virtuous actions, we find three categories: fruitional results, causally concordant results, and then environmental results. And then we find another category that Jamyan Sheba puts in that is called going towards the potential to go towards the Dharma. So what this means is that in dependence upon the ethics which abandons the 10 non-virtuous actions, one is able to achieve the results of the practices of the Buddhist path. So one is able to engage in a pathway which leads to the higher realms. One is able to engage in a pathway which leads to liberation. One is able to engage in a pathway which leads to complete Buddhahood. So all of the results that one can achieve from the higher realms to the realizations of the hearers, solitary realizers, and bodhisattvas are produced in dependence upon the ethics which abandon the 10 non-virtuous activities. So this section, this last section, that deals with going towards the Dharma is commented on by Jayan Sheba, and we find that the Sutra on the 10 levels is cited in the great treatise as a source for this information about the independence upon these virtues. One is able to achieve these results. So we're going to start on 239, where we actually find the sutra on the 10 levels says. So that's where we're going to begin.
총원대도 주주비 집어송도 셔버셨어. 총 안에 가자. 단년 되었다라제 대전송도 해야 되고 돼. 네 되건 저부터 가서 도버서 네 되건 저부터 완전히 용어라서. 주변다다 코에 트라네스 디바 먹어 주되게 네 고알로 코네 지등에 가이등에 치등에 시등에라서부터 술 트라네 ane jeje dai jesu ndane nye tu sana jen ko son jabe anjul nye ne la go de ken nye tu lo de marbe nye tu de le do ane jobo da da sta deba mago jobo da da ki jebo de le ane nge son la so de che de marbe chega na chi do nge what ku do nge tra ne ane nye tu ge jen so ni ju yo marba Hinjedan Tawa Lamrim Hinjuya Nanju Samba Duermatu, Hinjishimad Medrota. Hinjedan Tawa, Jenji Dai Jesunanes, Ta Jenji Dai Jesunane, and Netugi, Netuji and then Netuji Long to Jabunye, and the Sanji Dan, the Susun Jab to Yabunye, and then Lagune, could Netugi Jabutu. Dai Jesunanes. Jesundrane gombe na nyetuji drebu jubos chu ta nyetuji na wate drebu chu do wate nyetuji da chungwa de marwe wate drebu chu yongwares Robosa.
Then Khensur the shig the korwa shig the dungyal the kor
Deba mago ju kwalu kune ji dunga gai dunga nai dunga chi dunga what dunga ji dunga yu chaba dunga dunga the santana tel trago tra ne ana jeje dai jesu ran dan ye tu glang go ne ana ngai ru samba da da me tu gon go jiro a te su gon ne ana ye tu gjan ju tu go res ne tu 진짜 로보스 네트 다 네트 다 중마다 말바 네트 chancho 로보스 what about 지주잖아
then landung gi long the jawagare
landung 당아도 제부송세다 제부송다
the jawagare
네 테바송스나 때 가가 말베 아 제부송스는 제부총원디 버리진 가자지게 제부총원 어레 제부총디 잔디 서로 제부 종을 주로 그래서 라니도 라자가 제번 딩이 주로 그래서 테바 첨부 되게 장주 생바도 제부 첨부 주로 종 누구 주도 어디 되는 거라서
then the jipu chongo the nyentu
제부 종은 예토에 들어와
the
어디 예토 저거 어디 예토 랑공발에 되네 예토 주도 그래서 예토 장주도 그래 예토 다 정도 그래
in the jipu chongo depo the
종은 저거는 네트 다종 들어다. 네트 다종 받으러. 제번 딩게 제보 리더 도모 종도 도모이나 제보 종을 나이 맞아.
알레
what 제보 종을 나 던져서 던져. what 제보도 왔다. what 신의 종송을 자다 대바송을 자다 그가래도.
lesser okay
이나 더블에.
lesser so so here we find it says, the Sutra on the 10 levels says that those who have cultivated these 10 through the fear of cyclic existence and without great compassion, but following the words of others, will achieve the fruit of Shravaka. So Rinpoche went through this whole sentence to explain it. So here this is a sutra, which is a pronouncement of Lord Buddha that is cited here by Lama Tsongkhapa. And it says, those who have cultivated these 10 are referring to the ethics which abandons the 10 non-virtuous actions. And this person has abandoned those 10 because of fear of cyclic existence. So this word through fear of cyclic existence is referring to renunciation. So the desire to definitely emerge from cyclic existence is what this is referring to, and this fear here is what that practitioner wishes to be free from. So the fear here is the fear of suffering, the suffering of change, the pervasive compounded suffering, the suffering of birth, aging, sickness, and death. So all of these types of suffering are feared by this practitioner. Because these are components of cyclic existence, they wish to definitely emerge. So, in order to definitely emerge from cyclic existence, they engage in the ethics which abandons the 10 non-virtuous activities. So then it says, and without great compassion. So here, this is referring to the hearer's vehicle, which is one of the categories of the lesser vehicle, is not under the category of the great vehicle. So we don't have this great compassion. So the word great is put in there as a translator's note because there is compassion in that vehicle. It's great compassion that is what is missing in that case. So it says, but following the word of others. So the hearers are lesser vehicle practitioners who wish to achieve the state of nirvana for themselves alone. And they do so by listening to the teachings given by Buddha, given by various teachers, and then they meditate upon what they have been taught. So this is why they're called hearers, and they're able to achieve, it says, the fruit of a Shravaka. And this is referring to the state of foe destroyer, of the hearer foe destroyer. So this is what this practitioner is achieving. So when we look at the quote from the Lamp for the Path to Enlightenment that says, understand that there are persons of three capacities, small, medium, and great. I shall write clearly as identifying their characteristics. We see that there is a slight difference between those three capacities classification and then a classification when we look at the vehicles, such as a hearer's vehicle, solitary realizer's vehicle, and great. Rinpoche said in this case we could nominally designate these within those categories, but that becomes problematic because the hearer's realization of foe destroyer is beyond that of the small scope. So if we do categorize them in that way, that realization transcends the actual goal of the small capacity teaching. So there's a problem with classifying it in that way. But you could look to it in that way and realizing that these teachings are shared in common with beings, so they would be necessary mastery of those as well. So we could look at it by using that classification in some way, but it does become problematic because the vehicles are all vehicles to achieve liberation. The small scope is achieving another cyclic rebirth in the higher realms. So Rinpoche was going through different ways to classify, and he started with the lamp quote and then identified the differences that we would find. So here it says, those who engage in the ethics which abandons the 10 non-virtuous activities because of the fear of cyclic existence and a desire to definitely emerge from cyclic existence because of that fear, but without great compassion, but following the teachings of others and listening to the words of Buddha, they are able to achieve the state of a hearer, foe destroyer. So this is what is meant here. So the hearer, foe destroyer, hears the teachings and then has a desire to definitely emerge based on that information, and then meditates upon selflessness and is able to achieve that state of foe destroyer or hearer nirvana by doing so. Dikson, Kangalasa. Lessa.
Densele nizo na treasures ne to da rajel de niji chambuyo mares ne to da rajel niji chamme bu jusen karasna ne saman na de lo de niji meba niji da zo wo de ge
niji meba
niji chuchung ma de yo ma chabuyo mares wo de niji meba niji chambuyo mares
ale niji meba
niji da
the niji yure
niji ya ga de niji do ga niji chwa de chungwa yo ro
lesa
chungwa de chuchung de de yo je ro da
lesa
niji meba de chabuyo mares
lesa
niji meba niji dans densele what the nizo was not treasures nizo was not treasures niji chambuyo mares de do de chiba de do
lesa then yesawa the donagare
densele se pacha ji pacha pa sing de pacha jue de
lesa ga
nizo was not treasures nizo was not treasures de to female niji yo mares nizo was not treasures Hinzo was in Hijiro.
Ale.
Hinjo the Jawa. Hinjo yo
Lessa. Separated from.
Yeah.
Lessa. So here we find Rinpoche went back to the word compassion. So the hearer is without, and the solitary realizer the hearer and the solitary realizer are both without great compassion. There are forms of compassion that they cultivate, but there isn't this great compassion. It's a classification of compassion. So we find in the Dharmakirti's commentary on the Compendium to Valid Cognition that says that these beings are separated from these beings do not have compassion. And Rinpoche said this here is implying great compassion, again, in the commentary on the Compendium of Valid Cognition. And it says, because they are separated from this great compassion. So they're separate from. So this is the reasoning that Dharmakirti gives for the fact that these lesser vehicle practitioners lack the great compassion because they're separated from it in a way. So that's the reasoning that's given. So in the Rinpoche's reading directly out of the Lamrim saying, fear of cyclic existence and without great compassion. it's written in a very similar way, this without great compassion, separated from great compassion, as we find in Dharmakirti's commentary on the Compendium of Valid Cognition.
What does Jibare do? Ta Jenji Dai Jason Dawson Yen to set Marvin, Yen to Sana, and then Jen Anju Yen, and then Jen Son, Jen to Ne, Long to get near to Lord the Marbe. Dai Jason Dawnes, Jenji Dai Jason Dawne. What the new tool tang and young samba gurmado, and young samba men and yet to do mother. Netu lala, and young samba sim chagre. Chibu chungu lala, and young samba sim chabayo maroda. Chibu chungu lata, netu landa gumuda. Chibu chungu netu la ina, and young samba sim gure. Koaling Abanju, Naju Samba Yubi Tune, Mata Dunga Dame, what in the Gungurta, Omatanju Ajena, Nitu, Tuni to Nitu, Daju to Tuni to Matu, Tony Matuna, Kuza Montu Mare, Kuza Denzero, Kualuka Jutu, Denzere, the Ensosa, Denzik Shame, Tony Matuna, Nitu Dajumatu Mare, Rajak Dajumatu Mare, Sanji to Mare, what is Jiba Marbe?
Jibu Chongo, the neighbor Jong, the
Jibu Chongo, that Motu get in the Kaza, Jibu Chongo, Lama is in the
So, when we classify paths, we have the hearer's pathway, solitary realizer pathway, and then the bodhisattva pathway. We would, again, if we're looking at the three capacities, small, medium, and great, the pathways for beings of small capacity, or that are shared in common with beings of small capacity, are only nominally or named as path. Path necessarily leads to an enlightenment. So in the case of the small scope practitioner, we don't have that result of enlightenment. So when we say enlightenment, the enlightenment of a hearer, a solitary realizer, or a bodhisattva's enlightenment, which is Buddhahood. So we don't have that result, which is a nirvana or a Buddhahood. So because of that, we can't say that it's really a pathway. So we say that it's just nominally designated as path, but it isn't an actual path. So when we go back to the text, it says, without great compassion, but following the words of others. So a hearer is a practitioner that listens to the teachings that are given and then understands them. So listens and then comprehends what he or she has listened to, and then goes and practices what has been taught, and then yes, so that listens and then goes and practices what has been taught. And it's necessary to have renunciation in order for it to be considered a pathway. So if it is a pathway of the hearer or the solitary realizer or even the bodhisattva, we'd say that there is necessarily the desire to definitely emerge from cyclic existence. So this is a qualification of that, is that there is this renunciation present. Again, we see that conflicting with the small scope, the pathways which are shared in common with beings of small capacity, because we don't have a desire to definitely emerge from cyclic existence in that category of being. So we see how that becomes problematic when we start to try to compare them in this way. So renunciation is necessary, and in order for a being to achieve any of the enlightenments of the hearers, solitary realizers, or the bodhisattva's enlightenment of Buddhahood, it's necessary to have an experience of emptiness. So this is according to the Madhyamika Prasangika view, that there has to be a direct perception of emptiness. in order for one to achieve any of these results, because in order to be free from cyclic existence, one has to cut what one is bound to cyclic existence by. And here, according to the Madhyamika Prasangika, it's the grasping at true establishment, which is the root of cyclic existence. So the only thing that is able to abandon that is the meditation upon the nature of reality and an experience of emptiness, which allows one to abandon that grasping at this true establishment, which creates all of their cyclic existence or their samsara. So it's necessary to have it's necessary to have this desire to definitely emerge, but then to achieve the actual fruit, the actual result, it's necessary to have the realization of emptiness as well. So this is how the fruit of a Shravaka is achieved. And that's why I previously said meditating on renunciation and then meditating on selflessness. So that selflessness is aimed at achieving that realization of emptiness. That meditation on selflessness is aimed at achieving a direct realization of emptiness. So I think that's everything.
This one.
Yeah.
What is Oma bala rajuba da tajuwa niyo marba. Oma rajuba da sazamba soge netu dajumba kubunto bala yeji meji toni tugo mares. Kanza dame to ndigres. Kanza dame to zuna netu dajumba tutugres. Oma rajuba da sazamba so lagore. Kuyita tatuba malujang kwal jo mangelos leshi nyebu kudriyo da. Kuyita tatuba denze yemba denze. Denze mabuna ya Kual Jun Kual Pombi Rajumba Tutugres, Kanzak Dame Gunjigres, Tony Tuga Maris, who the Rajuba Sanzaba to the Ladura.
The Ramjuba need Kanga de Kelangadur.
Tajua to get Tony Tugus Larawa. Rajuba Ninja Kelang.
Nick Nietzsche. Then the Leishi Nimbo long the Ganja
Leishi Nimbo Kuja Tatuba Maluba, Kual Jo Magalo, Kuja Tatuba Denzin. Is a Tatuba de Mabunaya, Denzin Mabunaya, Kual Jo to the Dajumba Tutu in Yetuda Raje. What the
Leishi Nimbo Kalan.
Leishi Nimbo Yard, Umatajua.
Then
Leishi Nimbo goes or Rajuba and Sanzamba Rajube. Ne tu dajum ko monto bala de pongo ba toni tu mares kaza ga dame tu na digre
ale the sensamba dan ranjuba
what is it what
okay
oma tanju wa rajuba mechil chedo da
bless you. When we look at the tenet systems, we find that there are the 4 different categories, which have categories within themselves. We have the Great Exposition School, which is the Vaibhashika school. We have the Sutra school, or the Sautrantika school. We have the Mind-Only school, or Chitta Mantra school. And we have the Middle Way school, or the Madhyamaka school. And then in the Madhyamaka school, there are 2 categories. The Middle Way Consequence school, which is called the Madhyamika Prasangika, and then the Middle Way Autonomy School, which is the Madhyamika I'm blanking the Sanskrit at this moment, so I'm sorry, Yogacara, I'm sorry. So that's the second category, is the Middle Way Autonomy School. According to the Middle Way Autonomy School and the Mind-Only School, it's possible for a hearer and solitary realizer to achieve the state of their enlightenment, of their pathways, by only meditating upon the emptiness of self, or selflessness. So we find in the Lama Tsongkhapa's Essence of Eloquence, where it states this fact that they are able to, without transcend cyclic existence, without this full abandonment of the grasping at true establishment, according to those schools. So we find this pointed out in the Essence of Eloquence. But according to the highest school, the Middle Way Consequence school, the Madhyamika Prasangika school, because the root of cyclic existence is the grasping at true establishment, one is not able to get out of or transcend cyclic existence without cutting its root. So it's necessary to get rid of all of the misapprehension. Get rid of all of the grasping at things as being truly established or singular. And in other tenet systems, there is a statement that it is possible to, with just selflessness, achieve those results of nirvana and so forth. But the consequence school disagrees and states that it is necessary to completely experience emptiness. And the distinction here, just so I'm translating it properly, is just meditating on selflessness is meditating on just the emptiness or the lack of true self that one has. When we look at all phenomena, that is just directed at that one self, and then it's not directed at all phenomena. So the consequence school states that that emptiness has to be directed at all phenomenon, because that grasping at all phenomena as being truly established is what creates that cyclic existence. So I think I covered everything accurately. Thank you.
That's in what the new two good water about the new two J. Dayan Hiji Mabas, Tarangel, Raja. Yan Hiji Mabara, Hiji Maba, and the Hiji Chemo Maba, Nutula, Rangel Maba Chibaruta. Yan Hiji Mabara, Jeji Timujuba, Jeji Timujins, Rani Sanja and Dune, Tajin Drabanjuan, Tajin Drabanjuan Shebe. Shebe Jana, Raja Rupos, Raja Shantu Tongorista, Nijam Mabaje, Nijam Mabaji, Tim Jubate, Raja Tez Karsugore, Jen Matubajeta, Asus and Naja Sunjimanwa. Naja, one of the Jimas, Naja Dabijingaru Rangalamune, Jen Matuba, what the San Louis Hijimandua.
Wrong? Okay.
Jeje Dangalama Duba, and the Rangi Shachungo to Shay Nuba. Seba Tamize, and what the Rajil Chechuka Jurua, what the Jeji Timu was what things are. Jel Chutnabala, Dame Luji Nanjuguna, Na Geshe and Chushebaina, quitting the truth with Jeruta. And the Kuchi do, Kanama Shebaje, and the Trubat then, Mataba, what the then Chudanguaris, Dramen Luji Nanjugun Chudambas, Raja. And the Siba Tamis, Jeji Dangalama, the Barangisha Chilubas, Siba Tamis, Kukigangu, Marakuno, Kuru Rangalagune, Sajit Raja Dajumatu Grace.
Then the Khensur Tenzin, the Becha Chena, Khensur Tenzin, Chud.
Netuil Dingas the Yaga Userota, Sete Tua Userwa, Kuntanga Namis Usamarbangaje, Kotagun, then Jeji Dangalama, the Rangisha Chungut Sinuba, Dominion Gun Duku, Jel Matu Chigune, Salutan Shushin Jerota.
Then Genji Dana, the Khensur Gali Sandan, the
Jel Chusheba in the Kanshewota, Kanshew to quitting as the truth. Okay. Masheba J and the Luke Trubat and Ten. Lul Mambaya, one Chunzaya, or the Trubatin do Jenda Matabakono Wizarota, what then shooting waters. Siba Tamis, Noko, Gigil de woman, so Dajum were two tourists.
Then Khensur
the two mares.
The Khensur, the Gari Trugudu, the Yanje Sunan, the Gari Mabawa, the Mitapagom.
Matabaten do the Kan Matabaten quitting the true Wizarota. Zubul Mambaya, no, Ulma Chunzaya, Wara.
Oh, drowned.
What in the Jenda Matabakono.
Less so. So now it says, again, there are those without great compassion. So here, these first two categories were in the lesser vehicle category. So now we began with the hearer's vehicle, which is the first category of the lesser vehicle or of the Hinayana. And now we move on to the solitary realizer's vehicle. And it's sometimes translated in different ways. So I'll get to the point in a moment. But it's really self-Buddha. A solitary realizer, self-made, self-Buddha. So it says, there are those who are without great compassion or dependency on others and who wish to become Buddhas themselves. When they have practiced the 10 virtuous actions through understanding dependent arising, they will achieve a state of Prachika Buddha. So here, this is a being who's a practitioner of the lesser vehicle who does not have great compassion, who wishes to achieve the state of nirvana for themselves alone, and it's actually called a self-Buddha. This type of, but it's not Buddhahood, but it's liberation, nirvana, but it's named as self-Buddha. But I just want to make sure in the English we're not mixing it up. It's not Buddhahood. It's a lesser vehicle realization, because you can't achieve Buddhahood without compassion. So just as a note, I want to make sure I'm translating this properly. It says, without dependency on others. They're called solitary realizers because they feel that they do not need others' input. And it's actually disruptive if they have others' input for their practice. So these are beings who have achieved a state of understanding in such a level that they're able to realize from the things that they already understand internally. So if they are meditating on single-pointed concentration, they would see a teaching on impermanence to be disturbing, to actually cause disruption in their single-pointed concentration. And the way that they would be able to learn about these things or meditate upon these things is through their own powers, of being able to emanate as being burned up. So then they're able to meditate upon compassion, or emanate as if they are drowning. So then they're able to meditate upon impermanence. So all of the realizations are brought about by their internal spirituality, if you will, or their internal being, their previous imprints and so forth. So they see others as a disruption. So this is why it says, without dependency on others, and who wish to become Buddhas themselves. So they wish to be the self. But that word Buddhas themselves is just a translation as solitary realizers, or self-Buddha. So it sounds like they wish to become a Buddha, but it's meaning a self. They wish to become a self-Buddha, and it says, fire, drown. So this idea that they have, this idea that they have is similar almost to a prideful feeling. Rinpoche said it's not pride, but it's almost this: I don't need anyone else. I only need myself to be able to evolve into a self-Buddha. So that's why they don't have any dependency upon others.
Rajel da kante sanjaya deba yobara sanjaya. Sanjaya deba yobara yele mi hijimen sanjaya tu marbuta. Ane sanjaya bala keba tamasun susan sanjaya uru. Rajel tedabaji rajel solon jolan koso keba jatu sa urus keba ja. Keba jatu sa urus
Ranja.
Ranja. Keba soji koso keba jatu sa urus. And Siba Tami itself, when she did Angala de Rango Shantungo Seniors, Dramen let you know you can treat them Chechu Sonderis, then you tell you Maris, Rangel to yours. Soji Ranje Solon Julan goes to Kabaja Tusa.
Solon Julan, okay.
Solon Julan goes to Kabaja.
Kabaja.
Teaching Sanjeval Keba Tomason Tusan Sanjevro. Raja was Solon Julan goes to Kabaja Tusane. And couldn't able to let Dramen Luigi Nanjugun shoot in Neva Yunguare, Seba Tamise, Gigana Mateva Rango Shantungo, She never sonte, Rajek Chichudes, Netulio Mares.
So these beings desire what the Buddha's qualities are. They desire these qualities, but they can't achieve these qualities because they can't achieve these ultimate qualities. Because there lacks the components that are necessary to achieve Buddhahood. So there is a lack of great compassion, and this is why they achieve their self-Buddha state, which is separate, is a different state. And Rinpoche is making a distinction now, what differentiates, and I'm going to have to look at this later, the hearers and the solitary realizers. And Rinpoche said that in order for a great vehicle practitioner to achieve Buddhahood, there needs to be this realization of the mind that aspires to enlightenment, and then an accumulation of virtue for 3 countless eons. So there's these 3 countless eons that are necessary. And then according to the teachings on the solitary realizer, or the self-Buddha, there is 3 different categories that we find different than this is about, I'm not going to be able to get much further. 3 different categories we find that differentiate them from the hearers. So the solitary realizers, and when we look at the 5 paths, the path of accumulation, the path of preparation, the path of seeing, the path of meditation, the path of no more learning, it takes various beings certain periods of time to go through each of those stages. So the solitary realizer, kalpaja, take 100 eons to go from the Solan Julang, to go from the Then Sumba Yanju Suralam?
Sumba Trota, Dame Leji Nanjugun, Kecha Machine, Chushi, Mamba, the shade as Marve.
Oh.
Children nebo, the Debo, Debo. Keba, Toju goes to Keba Jatu Saba, Yisonti, Debo, Niyu was Dame Leji Nanjugun, children to Ware. Siba Tami, Sigala Matibas, Dajum to Son the Raja Chijures, Netul de Yomares.
So the hearer, so in order for the solitary realizer to achieve the state of self-Buddha, they have to do something which separates them from what a hearer does. So the solitary realizer accumulates virtue for 100 kalpas, 100 eons. So there's an accumulation of virtue that's taking place between the path of accumulation and the path of preparation. And as a result of this accumulation, the practitioner of this vehicle, there are 2 results. They do not rely upon others' influence, or so they are, because of the all the things that they've learned in this accumulation, they don't need others' influence, so they don't need the teaching from others or sound. So this second category, so it's first result is that they don't rely on others. They have the components within. And then second is that there is not a reliance upon even any kind of sound because of their practices. And because of their practices means that they're able to emanate themselves being burned alive, and then meditate upon impermanence, and emanate themselves being drowned, and be able to meditate on permanence. So they're able to, within themselves, create all of these different realizations without the need for others' input or even the sound of the words of impermanence. So if I mistook any of that, I apologize, but I'm pretty sure that's accurate within that section.
Waji Raja Wateri Tatina Senzabagi Water Raja Tawade, Senzabi Tawadris, Senzabi Tony the Raja Gunguaris, Netule, Kutoni Kazak Damel Chai, Senzabi Tony to Gune, and the Raja Dajum Gudures. What the Neju should be Umar Raju, but Senzaba Chibareta, Shandara Chitata, Kamala Shilata, what the Senzaba Chibar Raja Tawa.
Sensamba dan drawer.
Sensamba drawer. That neju should be Omar Raju Baro.
Then Gary Kailan?
Shanda Rajita. Raja Kanza Netu Kanza Dame Gungurwa. And Tele Chawa and Raja the Sensamba Tony Gungures, Sensamba Tony. She don't do it on. What Tony to go on, Raja Dabu Ture, she don't do Zemat Bungure, Netu Ponja. What the
Yanju Sensampa Yomare. Nadi Nave Selpo Lagu.
Sensabi to be Sensabi Gonsa Marita. Sensamba de what the Raja Tony, the Sensabi Tony Gongwares.
Ranja,
Chandrashita.
the Khensur, the Dawa, Kelang Dawa.
Sazambata to Gone, Raja Dajum go to the waters. Netu Gonza Dame Gone, Dajum go to the water. The Tara waters.
So we find in the text that another differentiation between a hearer and the solitary realizer is that the hearers, it states, are able to meditate upon the selflessness, just the emptiness of self, whereas the solitary realizer achieves the state of self-Buddha by relying upon a view, the view like the mind-only school view, which sees the emptiness of external, the lack of external phenomena. Which sees the lack of external phenomena. So we see in the case of the solitary realizer that their view is a little higher than that of the hearer when it comes to emptiness, because they're not just meditating upon the selflessness, they've achieved the higher tenet, which is like the mind-only school tenet. And the mind-only school tenet, we find a middle way autonomy school. There are two divisions of the middle way autonomy school. There's one that is similar to the sutra school, and there's one that's similar to the mind-only school. Chandrashita is a practitioner of the middle way autonomy school that leans towards the mind-only view. And this view that's presented would also be that which a being could achieve the state of self-Buddha with. So in the middle way Prasangika school, the middle way consequence school, it's stated that none of these beings can achieve their realizations of their goal, or realize their goals. So the hearers can't achieve their state of foe destroyer, the solitary realizers can't achieve the state of foe destroyer without complete emptiness. So this idea of meditation on just the emptiness of self is not sufficient, or these other incomplete views. It's necessary to have the complete view of emptiness in order for a being to be able to achieve any of those types see any of those types of liberation, to achieve any of those types of liberation. And so that's why in the Sutra of the Heart of Transcendent Knowledge we find the statement that he saw the five skandhas to be empty of nature, and then form is emptiness, emptiness also is form, etc. So we find these statements, and this is the complete view of emptiness that's necessary, not just the emptiness of self, the emptiness of all of these phenomena, as stated in the Heart Sutra. Rinpoche, so we'll take a short break, and we'll be right back.
So
now we've arrived at the Mahayana.
Jebala maybe Jana Shanju Sambi Satan, Padu de Simba, Tanjin Robos, what the that Teba Chimbilan Lujon Jagina, and then Sanji to Grace, what the head Marba.
So then now we move on to the Mahayana. When those with an expansive attitude cultivate these 10 through great compassion, skillful means, great aspirational prayers, in no way abandoning any living being, and focusing on the extremely vast and sublime wisdom of a Buddha, they will achieve the level of a bodhisattva and all the perfections. So here, this word, all the perfections, is referring to the perfected state of Buddhahood. So the perfection of all of the perfections, if you will. So that's what it's referring to here. And then just as a note, we have this, they're separate from sentient beings, that point that was made before about the solitary realizer, and we find here in no way abandoning any living being. So we see those two opposites there, and the reason for the term in the English.
Teaching sensitive illusion about Jundi Manga do you going to sensitive to no, Dajan Yaba J on the sensitive to your marble. What does God do in the 10 marble? Saint Jachoa, Hijitan, Takibatan, Palan Chamberton, Saint Taji Yuso, Motonwa, Saji. What the Nelson in the Saji to race?
Lesser.
Change it on them, that the Marvata. Judy Mea, do you want to say to what the Gorin Babale, Kamala Shila Marva, Kamala Shilage, Taji Chimbi Jete, Hiji Zawali Shumai, Shanchu says Julie Shumai, touch a part of the Shimal or the Kamala Shila Gorin Baba goes what is on the what to say lemon way. Hiji Zawal. Hiji Zawalishon, Hiji Zawalishon, Hiji Chembadan Dembas, what the later Mude, Hiji Chembadan Demba. Saji de Hiji Zawalishonare, Shanchu Senji Julishonare, and then touch Parut Simbalishonres, Shinru de Marbe, Hiji Zawalishon son du, Jinder Manga Duduma, Shebayina, and then Zawad Hiji Chembachi, the Jutil Mashi, Jinder Jinzo. What is
so when we look at this section, we find that there's a large amount of information implicitly within it. So it says, when those with an expansive attitude cultivate these 10 through great compassion. So here we're getting into what qualifies it as a Mahayana practice. So all of the, when we look at the beginning of Kamala Shila's middling stages of meditation, we find a quote that it says that even omniscience has at its root compassion. So all of the realizations that are achieved for the great vehicle practitioner, such as the mind that aspires to enlightenment, and then ultimately the state of omniscience. All of these things are caused by compassion, and they have compassion at their root. So what it's saying here is that through skillful means, great aspirational prayers. So what do those beings do? What do they engage in? They engage in the practice. They have a method. What is their method? Their method is for the practice of the 6 perfections. So first we have at the root great compassion, and then we, motivated by this, then practicing the method, which is the 6 perfections. And the result of that then is Buddhahood. So when we look at this word compassion and the word bodhisattva, the mind that aspires to enlightenment, it's necessary to speak to how those are achieved. So here, the cultivation of this great compassion. So how great compassion is achieved through a series of meditative steps. So we find in 2 different lineages of explanation, 2 different instructions on how to achieve the state of the mind, the state of bodhisattva, who has the mind that aspires to enlightenment. And within that we find great compassion being necessary for either one of those, so for either one of those practices, great compassion is necessary. So we look at the 7-point cause and effect for achieving the mind that aspires to enlightenment. We find that there are these steps of recognizing all sentient beings are your mother, remembering their kindness, wishing to repay their kindness, love through the force of attraction, great compassion, and then as a result of these things, we have an extraordinary attitude, which then results in the mind that aspires to enlightenment. So we find in the middle of this 7-point cause and effect this great compassion that's necessary, and then we find it equally important in the equalizing, exchanging self with others practice. So this is why at the beginning of Kamala Shila's text he cites it as the root to omniscience. Then the Ale, the Jachewa Semche, Chishin Dunchi. So it's where we have this word expansive attitude. Rinpoche said that we could also just put that bodhicitta is the expansive attitude. So it would say that what is this expansive attitude? It's the mind that aspires to enlightenment. So we find in Kamala Shila's text the points that are made that at the compassion is at the root. So we find compassion at the root of all of these practices. And then it speaks of how one engages in practice after having achieved this attitude, which is expansive, the mind that aspires to enlightenment. And the way that one does so is by practicing the 6 perfections. So one achieves this attitude and then practices those 6 perfections. So now we've arrived at the pathways of the Mahayana. So the reason that Kamala Shila states that omniscience has at its root compassion is because here's some correct signs that point that out. So those with an expansive attitude, so those who have the mind that aspires to enlightenment, we find that is necessary for there to be compassion in order for that to be generated, and then one is able to practice these perfections once one has achieved this expansive attitude. So in order to achieve that expansive attitude, it's necessary to have great compassion. Therefore, this is the correct sign that shows that at the root of omniscience is great compassion, because Buddhahood cannot be achieved without compassion, great compassion, bodhicitta, and the perfections. So it's necessary to have these in order to achieve that goal, and that's why. That's it. To achieve that goal.
Jebala mi de jane and what the Shanchu sent Gongi in Janas and the Shanchu Sembi Gone Abu Gongi in and the Shanchu Sembi Sa Susuju Sa Pabis Satamban Jibiba Satjo Jebi Sa what does it do what is one is that Satan Paru de Shimba Tanjin Drobos, Ju Paru de Shimba, Jebi Paru de Shimba, what to Sukoto was what is in Samarba, Tibachimilan Jan Gungina.
Yeah, that's it.
And Shanju Sembi Satogaris, Susujusa, Solanta Julani, Teatanga, Tingate, Susujusa, Parangate, Parasangate, what Buddhist or the Papi Samarba, what to go to or something.
The Geshe, the two Yunten and Drapodur.
She the Jeba Sanjay, she the Taji Chamberota.
Okay.
Tell Jibi the Heva Marvota. The Tuag Dundala, and Shanju Santa, Hijita to Gongina, and the Younger Sondanger.
Less so. With those with an expansive attitude cultivate these 10 through great compassion, skillful means, great aspirational prayers, in no way abandoning any living being, and focusing on the extremely vast and sublime wisdom of a Buddha, they will achieve the level of a bodhisattva and all the perfections. The focusing on the extremely vast, sublime wisdom of a Buddha is referring to the omniscience that the Buddha has. So the Buddha, there is no higher realization or wisdom to be achieved. It's the perfection of that wisdom. So this is the quality of the Buddha's wisdom is that it's perfected. It's at the state of omniscience. This practitioner, through engaging in the practices of the Mahayana and by developing compassion in the mind that aspires to enlightenment, and then practicing the perfections from that basis, this practitioner is able to achieve the various levels and grounds. So when we the various levels and grounds of the bodhisattva. So there are, when we speak of levels and grounds, there are those which are for superior beings and those for ordinary beings. So we can categorize them in various ways. When we say the first bodhisattva ground, this is necessarily not an ordinary being. It's a superior being. This happens at the path of seeing, where the first ground bodhisattva achieves that first ground. But there are ordinary bodhisattvas also at an ordinary level who are not superiors. So when we look at the paths, how we can divide paths, we can divide them into the 5 paths: the path of accumulation, the path of preparation, the path of seeing, the path of meditation, the path of no more learning. Those first 2 paths, the path of accumulation and the path of preparation, are pathways for ordinary beings. These are beings who are not superiors. The pathways of seeing, meditation, and no more learning are pathways of superior beings, non-ordinary beings. And at that first pathway, at the path of seeing, the first bodhisattva ground is achieved. These are the Mahayana 5 paths. The first bodhisattva ground is achieved. So here, one is meditate. So, I forgot something. So we find in the Sutra of the Heart of Transcendent Knowledge, the mantra that's within it, that's actually referring to these pathways that we're speaking of. It says, Teata Om Gate, Gate, Paragate, Parasam Gate, Bodhisoha. So the first 2 gates, Teata Om Gate, Gate, are referring to levels or pathways of ordinary beings. So these are referring to the first gate to the path of accumulation, and then the second gate to the path of preparation. These are both ordinary being pathways. Paragate is referring to the path of seeing, which is a superior. Parasamgate is referring to the path of meditation, which is a superior path. And Bodhisoha is referring to the path of no more learning, which is also a superior path. So we can divide these various levels and pathways into 2, those levels and pathways of ordinary beings and those levels and pathways of superior beings. So one is able to traverse these various levels and paths by practicing that which is put forth in the Mahayana, by developing great compassion, developing the mind that aspires to enlightenment, practicing the 6 perfections. So one hears these things and then puts them into practice, and then as a result of doing this, achieves the state of complete Buddhahood themselves.
Shangju Senpi Sa Tang Se Suju Sa Tang Papi Sa. Tene Shangju Wade Paru de Shimba Tangjin Rubus, Paru de Shimba Tangjin Rubu, Paru de Shimba de Ni Guayo, Ju Paru de Shimba Dang, Jebi Paru de Shimbas, what to Kalekaling Egudoda, Paru de Ju Paru de Shimbasana, and teaching Solon Jolan Golan, Golan wa te kandele ju pare de shimasure. Sanji ko bon to bi ju landele tijen solan jolan golan. Tolan golan jet marbe. O te ju pare de shimbare. Tala tene sanji ya ju pare de shim ju insan ju pare de shimbas. Tene jebi pare de shimbasana na chen de ta sanji land to gomba la tene sanji no na chen to ngoro. 네, 매네베냐데 다 나제 투고로데 데비 파르디심바. 파르디심바세도 어때 말로랑로다.
Okay. So we'll achieve a level of a bodhisattva. So there are levels of bodhisattvas. There are ordinary bodhisattvas who are ordinary beings, and then those superior bodhisattvas who are non-ordinary, who are Aryas, bodhisattvas. And it says, and all the perfections. So there are two types of perfection, causal perfection and resultant perfection. So the causal perfection happens at the practices, the Techen Solan Julang.
Ju paradishimba tetan gate parasangate watude ju paradishimba. Buddhist was at the paradishimba.
So we look at this classification of perfections. We have causal perfection and resultant perfection. Causal perfection are the practices such as the pathways of accumulation, the pathways of preparation, pathways of seeing, the pathways of meditation. So these four pathways, the practices within these four pathways would be considered causal perfection. And then resultant perfection is referring to complete Buddhahood, which is the path of no more learning, which is the fifth path among the five. So we look at the Heart Sutra mantra, Teata Om, Gate, path of accumulation, Gate, path of preparation, Paragate, path of seeing, Parasamgati, path of meditation. These all four are considered causal perfection, and then Bodhisoha, which is the resultant perfection, the path of no more learning. So the Gate, Paragate, Parasamgate are causal perfection, Bodhisoha, resultant perfection.
What the Sundu is on the road that Mariba? What the Ruba Kasara Rubo Nabatanji to the Ruba Sonso, what that the name Omajubajina Susuju Natan Sonji, the Rajan Jula dining and the Jesina Jingaba Lebane, Motujin Sudin Legend, the Tamadan Roson, Bugujubung Sudin Sonwala Dene, and then Moto Tatami, Teran Yungore, Tapa Yungore, Sanji Gomon Yungores, what the woman you were the Den Barber, talking about Tamachin Sartade, then the years
So, and then it says through practicing these activities a great deal on all occasions, they will you will achieve all the qualities of the Buddha. So we found previously a quote from the Compendium to the Middle Way, the Entrance to the Middle Way by Chandrakirti, the commentary on the root wisdom text. We previously, Rinpoche quoted this, and he said to just say we found it previously in a quote, but if I find it exactly. It speaks of the ordinary beings and here solitary realizers and bodhisattvas all achieve their aims by relying upon ethics. But I can find it after. For ordinary beings, those born from the Buddha's speech, those whose natures are certain as self-enlightened or conquerors' children, there are no causes of certain goodness or high status apart from ethical discipline. So here it shows how ethical discipline is indispensable, whether it's here a solitary realizer or bodhisattva vehicle, whether the being is an ordinary being or a superior being. It's necessary to have this ethics at its ground.
Lelang Chuteni, Debutan Chebi, Debutan Chebas, Debutan Chebi, Sheba Yongjen and Yongyu, Seka Meba Tanjin, Sai Ngwajitan, Tenla Papa Du, Gombajin, gomba yin sheba was jirmushi ta wotin de ge legend de nabi ge de gawaju de kabin de bo to sukngalo ane jonje dan sebu meba to sukngalo ne leben papa to me sai ngoje ta dual dos wote dual yoba na jite somba yins saga duata oh yeah.
Thus, I have explained the 2 sets of 10 paths of action along with their effects. I have explained everything that is unclear in other texts in accordance with the intended meaning of the levels of yogic deeds and the compendium of determinations. So here, 10 paths of action, 2 sets. So we're speaking of the 10 white actions and the 10 black actions. This is what is meant by that. And their results. So what those results of the 10 white actions bring, what the results of the 10 black actions bring. And it's stating that anything that wasn't very clear in other texts, Geshe Rinpoche or Lama Tsongkhapa has gone to Asanga, 2 of Asanga's texts as source material. So Asanga's levels of yogic deeds and the compendium of determinations. So he's stating this is where this information can be found.
So
what Lama Tsongkhapa says is so important, isn't it? What Lama Tsongkhapa says is always so important. So if we can slowly go through this text, then we'll start to really understand what it says in this book. And once we really understand what it says in this book, then we understand all of the information contained in the Kangjur, the pronouncements of Lord Buddha, and the Tanjur, the authentic Indian commentary. So we slowly, through this process of understanding this information, are then able to understand all of the texts because of it. So all the waters in the world end up in the ocean, and likewise, it's stated that all of the teachings of the Kangjur, the pronouncements of Lord Buddha, and the Tanjur, the authentic Indian commentaries, flow into are like rivers that flow into a major ocean, which is the lamp for the path to enlightenment. And the lamp for the path to enlightenment is the root text for this teaching. So this text is a commentary on the lamp for the path to enlightenment. Therefore, it contains all of the elements of the Kangjur and the Tanjur as well, because it's the commenting on the lamp which contains all of that.
Leji rado iwa jen temba saji del hengadwa jen temba wadendero da sombandere nabi lende kabi lende leji iwa jen temba so de somba tamarbe saji nabi lende kabi lende leji iwa jen temba so de da somba wad lengadwa kabi lende nabi lende tsane iwa jen temba lende.
So now we've arrived at that third category. So there were the first category of black actions and its results, second category white actions and their results, and then the third category a presentation of other classifications of karma. So we're finished with the first two. Now we begin this third category in the outline.
Leji yewa jen tamba sa leji yewa jen tamba tande de do somba leji yewa jen tamba la pendu je yewas rwa penji da zuje ge yewa anda nga so le de la penji ge le zuje ge le ni she hu do da penji ge le da zuje ge le ni penju ge yewa do de tambe yimare penju je yewa somba ra do wa somba la penju je yewa sa what that tomba penju yewa de penju yewa che na penju je yewa ne ta dendu penbe le da ngandu penbe le da dendu pen doje ji le da ngandu doje ge les what ne ka je un doje marbe yewa doje je yewa ne dendu penbe le ne ge le dans dendu penbe le de ge le da mage le ni ngana ne ge le des ge le de ge debetel dendu pen ores ne zuzu me ge patan de la tan metus pen ores ne gwa tan ngandu penbe le ne magwa Nandu Pambile the Magoris. Tell a dene, Nangason Pen. Dojil and Abba Medesa. And Dojil then go out the Nabam Yomare, Dendula Dojil go out the Magniga Yungore, Nandula de Yungores. Doji Panzuji Iwana, Dendu Pambile in the Gawatan, Dendu Pambile the Gawalja Wures, Gawacho. And Nandu Pambile the Magachu Dingero, Pambile, Magoa in Lasa. Doji Langaba Medes, Nandu Doji Dan, Dendu Doji Langaba Yomare, Mede, Dendu Yan, Yan Latan, Ombo Masan dance. Dundu Matan Lata, what the Sulaya, Tene, Kamba Meba, the Lapa Meba, me Meba, what the Mamudu was, what the Sukalo, the Memi Meba, Kamba Shachu down, when doing about the Sukalo, gained the Mares, what the Zuji Magi to what is, Zuji Magi to what is, and Dundu Laya Latan, Latan, Ombo Masan dance. On my son, do Modubatan, Satua, and Nemo, what does Galo, and Jubut and Mobiores, and then soon, and then Maggie do what she was, Maggie, Doji Maggie do what she was, Maggie, she lost.
Okay.
That Tondo, Panjig, Tondo Panjig led, Ida Nason Panjig led Magoro, Zuji Naba Yomar, Zuji, Tondo Dan, Eda Layan, Panju Panson Tuba, Yabane, good Duba Shedos, Tondo to Sula Shubu Yoris, Lut to Shubumendua, Tondo Dan, Eda to Shubu Yoris, Panju Panson Tuba Yabade, and then Copanjig Magi Pambarete, and then Zuji gave do Yoris. Joji gave to what is Tondo Yeda Laya, Tondo Shobu Veji Ulumendo, Lot to Shubumendo Allo, and the Yeda Shobu Yosarwa. That and then Omajuba Lotte Yorota, Jimba Mobatan, Chujima Sona, Jimbi Jabute, and then Dendu tell me to Mars, Matan, like Veji to Mares. Nanduk tell me the race, and
Jimba Yena,
Jimba Tana Lonsho Yongorota, Chuchi Masona, and Jimmy Debute, Dundry tell Mammy Bache, Tundul Pin the race, Tundu Dan, Eda Layan Penju Pason Subasa, and Lotan, Eda Zutrijan Dan. Trula Suba to Sulmi Lion Sonore. Eda Zutrijan, Chinakal Poyanum, Nivana Karamano Kuzula. What to sit in the Pinda is Tondo Dan, Yeda Dan, Benju Pason Suba Yabanan, Geshe Tosa.
Okay, the Nangila.
What about Tiju?
So the distinctions between, so a presentation of other classifications of karma. Other classifications of karma are presented in two parts. First, the distinction between projecting and completing karma, and the karma whose result you will definitely or only possibly experience. So we can find there will be four basic categories when we look at this first point, the projecting and completing karma, because you can have projecting karma that is good or bad, and then completing karma that is good or bad. For instance, when you are born into the higher realms of existence, this projecting karma is virtuous. When you're born into the lower realms of cyclic existence, that projecting karma is non-virtuous. But then, we have then the next type of karma, which is the completing karma. And we find there are occasions when there are animals or hungry ghosts who have a lot of items, who are maybe very wealthy, maybe nagas who are like kings, who have many amounts of wealth. So we see that this is a completing karma that is taking place here. When it's that completing karma is virtuous. So there's a statement in the Madhyamika Avatara, the Chandrakirti's entrance to the middle way, that states that those beings who engage in generosity but do not have ethical behavior will be reborn as animals with things, with enjoyments, or with things. So, so this is what is meant. So the generosity itself is a virtuous action. So the actual components of their completing karma, or their circumstances, are good, are positive. So we would say that there's a completing karma there that is virtuous. So we have the two kinds of completing karma, the virtuous completing karma and non-virtuous completing karma. So it says the distinction between projecting and completing karma. Although the karma that projects a rebirth into a happy realm is virtuous, and the karma that projects a rebirth into a miserable realm is non-virtuous, there is no certainty with regard to completing karma. Non-virtuous actions create, even in the happy realm, such effects as not having complete limbs, fingers, or sensory organs, having an unpleasant color, a short lifespan, many illnesses, and poverty. Further, virtuous actions create consummate wealth, even for animals and hungry ghosts. So here it's saying that you have projecting karma, which is non-virtuous, that projects you into the lower realms of cyclic existence, or projecting karma that is virtuous, that projects you into the higher realms of cyclic existence. Now, you also have what is called completing karma, that completes the details of that existence. So you could have a projecting karma, virtuous karma, which makes you a human being, but then have all these faults that are listed here that would necessarily be they would necessarily come from a non-virtuous completing karma. And then the same is true for an animal. An animal's projecting karma was a non-virtuous karma, but if they have a lot of enjoyments and so forth, then their completing karma was virtuous. So this is how we distinguish between the two. The projecting karma throws you into the specific realm, and then the completing karma creates the details within that realm. And positive things, good things, such as complete limbs and a good color and a long lifespan and so forth, come from virtue. And then these things, which are listed here, come from non-virtuous actions. So that completing karma is non-virtuous, where there are these incomplete limbs, fingers, or sensory organs, having a bad color, a short lifespan, many illnesses, and poverty. So we see the opposite true in even lower realms, which are projected by non-virtue, where there is wealth, where there isn't this poverty, and that's because of a virtuous completing karma. It doesn't have, they are not connected, the experiences are connected to two separate types of actions, virtuous and non-virtuous.
Penji gi penbi madan hato solaya roji de gwa da magwa ni ga yungres penji gi penba ta nga su ta bina ne nga su mag ga lo penji gi penba ro gi penba ro ne roji de da nga su mele penju chewa ta de wa ta wa ta ya bu mo do wa du zunga roji gi du ba yi ro da tala ten chi bu mel chi bu mo yo da wa de roji gi du ba yi ro ta mele anchi ne na sa ta nan du nge ba lo so ba wa ten chu bu mo yo do wa de zunga roji me gi du ba res me gi du ba ni da sa ta penji me gi phom ba la roji me gi du ba da ge du ba ni de me je wo sa me ja was ta penji me gi phom ba ton do ta so ngalo nga so to so ngalo penji me gi phom ba ro penji me gi phom ba de roji de gwa da me gwa ni ga yo res ta roji ta pana to no nga so amara ga to chil ga ba shira do che nya ga do che da shem da wa to so ti che ba shira ro che da to so ga penji me gi phom ba ro da kuchul khala to so ga lo ga so men ra bu ku so sa do de roji ge do ba so de je ro da doje gezu wa to sing samare ba mama belina to lama chebutan kura to ke ta to su ja ta to su khala ma bu tegro ta good house what the khala ma bu tegre what the su ja go ta
les suji like gewa
단도 술가 저 쳇다 샤면야 돼도 도지 페이지 맥이 pom바레데 쿠집이시라도 나서 칼라 메 칼라 나서 쿠들 제거도 나서는 회관 제거도 쿠들 집은 말베 어때 도지 게도 와서 어떻게 인사
So then it says, then Lama Tsongkhapa goes on to say, this being the case, there are 4 sides to the relationship between being projected and completed. Here we have the 2 possibilities when we have the projecting karma. We have the virtuous projecting karma, which creates the higher realms of the gods and humans, and non-virtuous projecting karma, which creates the lower realms of the hell, hungry ghost, and animals. So these are all created by projecting karma, but then the details within those existences, the details are created by the completing karma, and then there can be virtuous or non-virtuous completing karma, and then virtuous completing karma creating positive things, non-virtuous completing karma causing negative things. So for instance, you would have many different varying results happening all the time. So you would, for instance, in a human rebirth, you would have a virtuous projecting karma, but you might be born very poor or with withered, incomplete sense organs or bad color. So this would be a non-virtuous completing karma, whereas you might have an animal who has a non-virtuous projecting karma, but a virtuous completing karma because they are projected into the lower realm, which is a negative, so it's non-virtue, but their completing karma may be virtuous because they have many enjoyments. So an example of this is in the United States, many people really like dogs and cats and take care of their animals and feed them and take care of them as if they are an actual human being. This is caused by virtuous completing karma. So these animals have a non-virtuous projecting karma, so they're thrown into a lower realm of existence, but a previous virtuous deeds they've done create this virtuous completing karma, and they're able to have food readily available and not any kind of the same problems that other animals would have to endure. And then you have other beings who have nothing and have many illnesses and so forth, be it higher or lower realm, and this is because of a non-virtuous completing karma. And also another example is in Tibet. The horses of the lamas, they were taken care of very well and fed as if they were humans as well. So this is another example of a complete projecting karma that's non-virtuous, but a completing karma that's very virtuous because these horses were taken care of so well and had all of the enjoyments they would wish to have, that many enjoyments they wish to have.
Magi legend dendu ta gwada magi gi leg dendu phengre ngandu ane magi leg ngandu jiwa phengres phemba dance yonso zuba shebi lezo riba shawus ane dendu doje dela gwada mago niga yuare ngandu doje dela ya phenje gwada mago niga yuares riba shawus Pemba said the Kazana Pemba ne Kanki, Naba Meba Pemba was Naba Meba, Naming Pumbo, Naming Pumud Pemba is. Yonsu Zuba Sheba ne Kanki Cheba na Debata Menduba, Noa Wosa. Tanga Zuba that Gawag Pembaro. Gawa Pensa doing the Nasul Debata, Dea Dewa Dogre, Menduba Dungan Dogumarota. Deba Dewa de ne doje ge do yore mende be donge de doje mege do wore le ben baba to merem de what is on the
Let me just reread all this. This being the case, there are four sides to the relationship between being projected and being completed. Among lives that are the result of virtuous projecting karma, there are both results from virtuous completing karma and from non-virtuous completing karma. Among lives that are the result of non-virtuous projecting karma, there are both results from non-virtuous completing karma and from virtuous completing karma. And then Lama Tsongkhapa cites Asanga's Compendium of Knowledge, the Abhidharma Samachaya, as the source for all of the information that's presented here about projecting and completing karma. And it states that understand that virtuous and non-virtuous actions project and bring to completion birth in the happy realms and the miserable realms. Projecting karma projects a fruition. Completing karma is that by which in a rebirth you experience the wanted and unwanted. So what does this mean? We all want happiness and we don't want suffering. So the wanted, what we want is happiness, is created by virtuous completing karma, and what we don't want, which is to feel bad, or suffer, is created by non-virtuous completing karma. So that's what is meant by you experience the wanted and unwanted. So we're out of time. And we'll do the concluding mandala offering, dedication prayer. Thank you again, everyone. The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this is a Buddha land and off. May all sentient beings realm. I dedicate whatever virtues I have collected for the benefit of the teachings and of all sentient beings, and in particular for the essential teachings of Venerable Losang Drapa to shine forever. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. I dedicate all this virtue to emulate the knowledge of the hero Manjushri and likewise Samantabhadra as well. With whatever dedication is praised as supreme by all the conquerors who traverse the three times, I also dedicate all my roots of virtue for the sake of auspicious deeds. In that pure land surrounded by snowy mountains, you are the source of all benefit and happiness. All-powerful Avalokiteshvara Tenzin Gyatso, may you stay until samsara's end. I pray for the long life of the precious Khensur Wandak, upholder of scriptural and realizational doctrines, the spiritual friend who trained extensively in the five great philosophical texts with exceptional wisdom and perseverance. Geshe Lharampa